I gotta tell you, this seems very rudimentary, doesn't it? I mean, it seems pretty obvious. You have Dustin Poirier, who was one of the greats ever from the UFC's Glamour division. The UFC has never, ever had a weight class as difficult as 155 pounds. And if you go look at every single champion they have ever had, and you compare that with any other division, you're gonna go, wow, that is a who's who of absolute stars. Now, I tell you that because Poirier is one of the greats to have ever done it in that weight class, for sure. And there's a bit of a built-in narrative here. And many of you even have it. Many of you hardcore fans follow this channel, you follow the sport, you love it, you can't get enough. Your minds are playing tricks on you. Like there's a part of this that feels like, well, you know, Dustin's going on, you know, he's on his way out and he certainly had a good run and, you know, doesn't really belong in this spot. This was, you know, he came up on a title shot, broken clocks right twice a day. Let me just remind you, just so you are aware, Dustin Poirier's last 5 fights have been 5 rounds each. That's what you do in title fights. Oh, by the way, Dustin Poirier 2 fights ago had a title fight. Like this idea of Dustin getting one thrown at him. He fought for a title 2 fights ago. Salt Lake City. A year ago. He had a title fight, a featured 5-round BMF title fight. His last fight turned out to be a #1 contenders fight. And now he's right back in fighting for a title. And I'm only telling you that because this idea that, you know, the old dog's getting one more thrown at him and then we're going to have this new era come in. That might be, well, what happens, but that is not what the current stakes are. You're remembering it wrong. And Dustin Poirier also made a comment, and that narrative is misunderstood. And his comment was, if I lose, I will not have another title shot. Because the road back to climb the division, what it would take, while I do still have the skills and my body could still do it, mentally, that is so tough to do, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make that commitment. Going to do some other things with my time. Talked about fatherhood, talked about being a husband, just having a schedule. So that got quickly misinterpreted with a loss means Dustin's going to retire. And what do we know about guys that are talking about retirement? They're done. They are done. It is like when a candidate says, I'm going to suspend my campaign. No, you just ended your campaign. There's no such thing as suspending it. And there's no such thing as thinking about retirement and then competing at the highest of levels. But that's not what's happening here. Dustin is not talking about retirement. Dustin is not done after this fight. He was talking about loosening the reins a little bit. Maybe giving a look at 170 pounds, if that's what it took to find parity, to have the big matches. The Nate Diaz, the Colby Covington, the Conor McGregor for the 100th time. That's not the road that he's going to go down, but I'm making that point. That's all that he's talking about. And so, you know, he's talking about taking it day by day and fight by fight, which is a very realistic thing that you have to do at a point in your career, as opposed to looking at that mountain, understanding it's one step at a time. There's 3-4 guys I'm going to have to beat along the way. A lot of hotels, a lot of sacrifice. I'm just sharing. Saying I'm not going to attempt to become a #1 contender again at 155 pounds is not at all saying he's going to retire with a loss. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because after he made that statement, the line at DraftKings moved. It moved because history says a guy can't be halfway in. And that line was misinterpreted. Dustin is a fun and a soft-spoken, but coming out and speaking and getting his message across to the media, it's not the world's strongest point by him. And he is not talking about desperation. He's talking about looking at this fight, burning his boats, putting all the chips in, and he was expressing that he understands the urgency that beating Islam has. By the way, I worked with Laura Sanko, Brett Okamoku, and Anthony Smith today. And Anthony and Laura picked Dustin. In fact, both of them basically have the same analysis, which is, I think Islam's better. I think Dustin's gonna win. Something in the air, something about the momentum, something about perception, which I also think is wrong, right? I told you two things you have wrong on Dustin. Well, there's also a narrative wrong on Islam, that Islam is overlooking Dustin. That's not true. However, they think he is. And they're agreeing that Islam is going to win positions and win rounds and win most of the fight. And that Dustin is going to win one moment of the fight, but that moment is going to finish the fight. And that may well be what happens. I'm here to give you my prediction, which many of you know is the curse. I'm putting the curse on Islam. I think Islam wins. I think when Dustin tells him you're going to be leg diving and looking to take me to the ground, that is a last-ditch attempt psychologically to get Islam to not do that. But I also think that's fun, and I think to a degree that's going to work. I think it's very smart by Dustin. I do think Islam's going to stand with him longer now, just because of that statement, than he had planned. But I think you're going to see a side of Islam that you're going to be very impressed with. I like the fight. You're going to get a long fight. You're going to get some minutes. They're going to burn some calories out there. But I'm taking Makhachev.